Great to see you, Eli. Welcome. We have all met before the show. We will not kid you, and we welcome all of you in the studio audience. This is an hour, a tribute, a look at the life of Eli Wallach and Anne Jackson. You guys have done something kind of, I guess, extraordinary in this business. You've been married 36 years. You have worked together. Tremendous stage classics. We just saw just only a little bit of the film. And you've kept a family together. How has it changed over the years? Is it still as much fun?
Eli?
It seems like yesterday.
When was it fun?
No, it has.
Did you rehearse that line?
No.
No, it's been a struggle. I think it's a struggle for everybody who is living in today's world to raise children, to have children that grew up in the 60s. And it's a struggle just, you know, to go 20 minutes at a time is what you have to do.
Is that it? But
I think so.
How about the working together, too? You met doing This Property is Condemned, a Tennessee Williams classic. In those days, what was Eli like?
I thought he was brilliant. And he was so considerate and so dear. And as the years went by, he got more considerate and more dear.
You're very sweet.
You did, Eli.
How about Anne?
Well.
Anne? Well, she thought I was too old for the part originally. I had just come out of the Army, and it was a play with only 2 people in it. Since then, we've found plays with 2 people in it, and we usually pick plays that have tremendous fights, and we can exorcise all the demons in our real life relationship by doing it on the stage. One time I remember we had a fight on the way to the theater, and I was driving, and I stopped the car, and I said, Anne, you take the damn car, you drive it. And she didn't have her glasses and went the wrong direction. And we got to the theater, we were late, and we were sitting there getting made up, ready to go on. And in the play, I had kidnapped her and taken her to my apartment and tied her up in a chair. And as she started to speak, I said, shut up. Well, that performance had an urgency about it and a truth.
Anne wrote a wonderful article that I read in a playbill. Actually, it was from Edinburgh, Scotland, which we'll talk about in a second, but it was called After the Kiss. And there's a great line you wrote, Anne. You said, I get tension headaches wondering which role I should play, actress or wife.
Oh, yes,
Or
or
mother.
mother. Yes. Well, it's true. I mean, I've stopped believing in the publicity that I have a happy marriage and that nothing, and that I'm such, an example for young people of making it work, marriage and career. And I realize that I come very close to ruining both those images when I start working. I get to be a pain in the neck when I rehearse.
What do you mean?
Well, I take on what you, I guess, were asking. I take on the aspects of the character I'm playing. I suddenly get an inferiority complex if that's the character's role, or I get very deep into those things. And I never thought I did. I never thought I was one of those people who said, oh, God, I live my part. But evidently, it does affect one. In other words, what I'm saying is that one does bring the theater into the home and the home into the theater.
Well, I for example, I used to do a commercial for a bank in New York called the Emigrant Savings Bank.
Right.
And I said to them, why do you hire me to do the commercial? I usually play bandits on horseback who go in and hold up banks. That film dealt with wild horses and the idea of capturing them and making them into dog food.
And the death of an era, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
No, he died 10 days after we
After it was
finished.
finished. Just after it was finished.
The last shot in that movie is remarkable because Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable are in a truck and they're driving, and she says, how do you know how to get home? He says, I just follow that star. And John Huston never put on the end of that film, the end. That's one of the few films where you don't see the end. Anne and I enjoy I enjoy the theater much more because it's a complete experience and you do it all at once. In 2 hours, you live through the experience. In the movies, that film took 3 months, 12 weeks.
Anne, we have a clip of a film that I don't know whether it's as important to you for the acting or for the friendship that developed. Talk about this. It's with Jack Warden. You are still close friends,
From
aren't
Private
you?
Battles.
Oh, yes, yes, I'm very fond of Jack. So is Eli. Jack is one of our dearest and oldest friends. This was before we did the film together.
You
we
were friends, yeah.
Yes. I guess We've known Jack since...
30 years.
30
yes.
years. Let's
Yeah,
take-
I love Jack.
Your friendships that you formed in the theater seem to be those people who wear well, who just have nice qualities about them. Is that the way you've kind of focused on your friendships? Or the reason why?
Well, friendships in the theater are difficult to maintain. It's like friendship is like a marriage in a way. You have to work at it.
Why more so in the theater, though?
Well, because if you're a doctor and you
Yeah.
have a cohort who is a friend, you see them more often. Actors are constantly breaking up homes and going on to other things, and we don't see each other sometimes in 10 or 15 years and maintain friendships. For example, Maureen Stapleton is a very dear friend of ours, and I have said to her, you know, sometimes people get sensitive when you don't call them. I love Maureen because whenever I pick up the phone and talk to her, it's as though we just talked 15 minutes ago, no matter where.
Isn't that the theory? You know, you pick up where you left off.
Yes, and Gig Young had that, who was with me in Lovers and Other Strangers. He'd all of a sudden call me from, I'd be in London or I'd be somewhere, and all of a sudden I'd hear from Gig. Hadn't heard from him maybe in 2 years or so, and he'd say, hi, and we'd talk as though, you know, there was no time span. Those are the actors that you keep in contact with.
I should tell you that it's very good of Anne and Eli to be here today because tomorrow they start rehearsals at the Kennedy Center, a play by Victor Razov, who is a Russian playwright, called Nest of the Woodgrouse. You're really excited about this, aren't you?
Well, we're happy about. We did it at the Public Theater in New York last May and June and July. We're going to do it again at the Kennedy Center for 6 weeks. And then in April, we'll film it in Moscow.
Well, what is wonderful about that is that it is a play written by a contemporary Russian author about a family. It is a non-political piece in a sense, but it is critical of Russian bureaucracy and funny. And the audiences that come are surprised that it isn't a dissident writer. They say, you mean to say that this play is playing in Russia at the same time?
Shows
So
the Russians
that's
have a
fun.
sense of humor.
Yeah, and it makes you feel as though you're doing something that is really taking the heat off of this whole situation, you know, at the moment. Not that we think that we're, you know, that much of an influence. I mean artists by we. But indeed, the theater does reflect what's going on in the world today.
Well, people say, how long did you want to be an actor? And as a kid, my bed was the Sahara Desert. And I was always in the Foreign Legion, crawling across the desert and getting shot. My mother would come in and say, it's time to eat, and I'd say, I'm bleeding. And now I get paid to do the same thing. You see?
I found out something your father used to say when he'd walk up to the box office and when it was your film. What would he say?
Oh, he would twist the story. He'd come back and say, you know, I walked up to the box office, my son's movie was playing there, and I'd say, the woman selling the tickets would say, you'd think you'd have to pay. He'd say, why? She says, well, you look exactly like your son. Now, they had no idea who he was, because when he went to the box office, he said, you think I'd have to pay? And the lady cashier would say, why shouldn't you pay? He'd say, that's my son. Nobody in my family had anything to do with the theater. They all thought I was a little nuts, but they would be tolerant and understanding. All of my family are teachers, and I took the teacher's exam and failed it. And I thought, somebody up there loves me. And so I went into acting.
And to Texas to go to college with people like Zachary Scott, John Connolly, Walter Cronkite.
All in the same class.
You told me why you did that. Why?
Well, it was very inexpensive. Believe it or not, tuition in Texas in the 30s was $30 a year.
Do you believe that?
And board and room was $30 a month.
Oh.
So I went there.
And your dad was a barber.
Yes.
Did you do the same imagination trip that Eli did, or were you encouraged by
my father?
By your mother and father for this?
I was encouraged by an older sister and a brother-in-law, whom I write about in my book called Early Stages. They were the ones who really, my father, I think, would have liked for me to have gone to college and to have been a biologist. Why? I have no idea, except that I once got a 90 on a test in biology. But I was...
How did you do in theater?
I don't think I did very well.
Well, I'll tell you, you certainly, I wouldn't believe that. Eli, do you ever think sometimes that you wish that, that your mother and father were around these days, or maybe your aunt or your Uncle Sam or some of those people, to see how all of this has progressed?
Well,
and
I
developed?
think one of the drives of any young person going into the theater is to convince the doubters, to convince your parents, to convince your friends that you can make it. You know, I played for the Queen of England many years ago when she was just became the Queen, and they printed 6 programs, and I sent one home to my mother, and she was so excited because I'd played for the Queen. I remember also playing for Winston Churchill in London, and I was playing an Oriental, and I came on, he sat in the front row, and I came on and I bowed, and I bowed, and I looked straight at him in the front row and I bowed, and he was wearing a hearing aid, and he went like this, and I don't know whether he turned it off or on. And I spent the rest of the performance thinking...
Eli, we have a little surprise for you. I'm not sure if you've ever seen this before or not. I don't think so. But if you would watch the camera, we have now put the film in the camera. This will take you back to February 1st, 1929. Do you recognize these people?
Yes.
Can you
oh
see
my-
it? Who? Who are we seeing?
That's my dad.
Is it?
Yes.
And who?
And
who
my
else?
mom.
And your mom. This
Oh,
was at a
my.
party.
Where did you get this?
You
I didn't have it.
Explain though. Now, who else? Who enters the picture here?
I can't see.
All right.
Look at my pop. Oh, my God. And my
Is that
mom.
Abe?
Now, who is this?
That's
Eli,
me.
that's you. And who are you dancing
my
with?
Goodness, Eli, you were beautiful.
Who is this, Eli?
That's Hattie. That was Hattie, Aunt Hattie. Oh, God.
Have you ever seen this film?
Never.
No.
That's my sister. That's my sister who lives in Texas
Sylvia,
now. Yes.
how beautiful.
Now, but watch this. We are told, Eli, that what the expression that we'll see in a moment in you is something you still do.
Kissing? No, that's not
No,
me.
no, that's not you.
How about
Watch
this?
the eyes.
This is my younger sister.
Look at the eyes. Look at the eyes.
Oh, my. Oh,
This
how
is your
wonderful.
life.
Does that surprise you?
Oh, that, yes. Oh, my, I haven't seen that.
I will not give away where we got
Uncle
it quite
Ben, who
yet.
said he had that film.
No, it's
on
my
you.
Uncle Sam in Brooklyn.
Your Uncle Sam.
Yes.
Your
Was
Uncle
it?
Sam in Brooklyn, Uncle Sam Wallach, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
my word.
We did do a little research.
Isn't that sweet, Eli?
Do you wonder and wish that we didn't just get so old so fast that we lose people that meant something and encouraged us along
Well,
the way?
that's a strange phenomenon that happens when you make films, because suddenly now on television I'll be flipping a dial, and there's a movie I was in 20-some-odd years ago. We took a young girl in Paris to see a movie, my first film, called Baby Doll, and I sat there with her, it came on the screen, and she said, "Who's that?" I said, "It's me." Oh, she said, "I didn't recognize you."
Your 3 children, Katherine, Roberta, and Peter. Roberta and Peter live in New York, but Katherine is the daughter you really don't get to see very often. Isn't that so?
Our baby, yes,
Your
she's our
baby.
youngest. Yeah, she lives in L.A. now, La La Land.
She does.
Yeah.
Do you know what we did? We put some pictures together of when she was younger. Maybe as we watch these, both of you kind of talk about what kind of a child she was. Would you do that?
Katharina Beatrice.
What was special about her?
She's an imp.
Catherine, she's an imp, yeah.
She's a devil. She's a wonderful personality, wonderfully warm child,
Yeah.
and a lovely actress.
You can
And-
see that we're not proud parents. I hope you can see that.
And your baby. Eli, were the two of you especially close?
Well, yes, I was doing a play. I'd often be doing plays, and I'd start to tell them stories, and I'd be so tired, I'd fall asleep in the middle of a story all the time. But yes, we had a wonderful relationship. We still do.
Do you?
Yep.
I want you to listen to something.
Mom and Dad, I know that you're talking about me. I can just feel it.
That's
I just wanted to tell you that whenever I'm out here in California and I'm feeling very depressed, I think about you guys and the family unit, the mafia, and it makes me really happy.
But Katherine is not in California. Would you put your hands together and welcome Katherine Wallach?
I can't. Oh my God.
the middle. I said that this morning. Hi, kiddo.
Oh my goodness! You know, I used to look up to this when she grew up and say, "I am the mother." Hello, Catherine.
We just saw her on Knots Landing. She played a nurse.
Anne told me last week, she said, I cried and I cried and I cried through that. You did, didn't you?
Well, yes. I mean, it's extraordinary to see Katherine on television and looking so different and being a character and acting and. Oh, I just thought you were very good indeed.
There's a sweet connection with seeing our daughter as a nurse. Because years and years ago when we were first married and I couldn't get a job in the theater, I sat up in bed one night and said, I'm going to quit this business. It's ridiculous. I run hospitals. I did it in the Army for 5 years. I know how to run a hospital. That has dignity, and I don't have to worry about being an actor and being rejected. And Anne sat up and said, I'll be a nurse.
He went right back into the theater. But also, I was in a play when I was Catherine's age, doing Yellow Jack, and I played the nurse. And it said in the cast of characters, this play can be done by an all-male cast, and that you don't have to change. The nurse can be done by a man. You don't have to change the sex of the character. I thought, well, that's...
You were beautiful in that scene,
Thank
Catherine.
you, Dad.
You did not do any encouraging for this profession, did you? For your 3 children?
No,
Catherine?
if anything, we tried to discourage.
What's that he said? They said, do you want to send your kids into acting? Would you push your kids into acting? And he said, well, would you want to push your kids off a bridge?
But now, do you feel that Catherine's handling the profession the way you would want her to?
No, that was a slight misquote, Catherine. What Daddy said was that people ask the question as though to be an actor is about the worst thing one can be. And our feeling was that we're very protective of our profession, and that we feel that acting and theater and film is a necessity rather than a luxury, and that it's a dignified profession. And yes, we want our children in it, although there is so much pain involved with it.
But do you both have this feeling that it's the struggle on the way up that really makes you ultimately good at your profession? I mean, the name, does the Wallach name open doors, or do you go to bat for that, or are you doing this on your own, Catherine?
Well, I used to never mention the name. But now I think in California especially, it does help get in the door. But then, as I say, once the door opens, they're not there.